Akademiks can't ride no wave.
And were tasked to take their F-35As across the Atlantic instead of going home to be prepared to support this operation. The same is with our Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve Command tanker and mobility forces, who stepped right out of their civilian jobs to deploy and to protect the region. Lastly, I want to highlight the unsung heroes of warfare, our American logisticians and sustainment force, those who quietly work every day behind the scenes to project and sustain America's combat power. Our leaders from World War II were right when they said professionals do logistics. As regional tensions rose, the Joint Force elevated our force protection measures on the order of the Secretary and repositioned discreetly civilians and non-essential personnel designed to ensure the safety and security of our Joint Force. By the time operations began, only essential forces remained on our bases and in theater, all ready, capable to respond. So now let me move to H hour. At 3:38 p.m., on Friday, February 27th, the United States Central Command, through the Secretary of War, received the final go order from President Trump. The president directed, and I quote, "Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck," close quote.
Oh, shit.
In the region, every element of the Joint Force made their final preparation.
Oh, go ahead.
Air defense batteries readied themselves, checking their systems to respond to Iranian attacks. Pilots and crews rehearsed their strike packages for the final time. Air crews began loading their final weapons, and 2 carrier strike groups began to move towards their launching points. Across the globe, our operation centers came alive in Tampa, Florida, here at the Pentagon, and of course forward in the Central Command AOR. As always, operational security was paramount as we sought to maintain and sustain the element of surprise. This operation was highly classified so that at H hour, the enemy would see one thing: speed, surprise, and violence of action. The first movers were U.S. Cybercom and U.S. Spacecom, layering non-kinetic effects, disrupting and degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate.
Translation jammers. They jam the internet and other, communication devices.
And respond. At H hour, the beginning of major combat operations, 01:15 local Eastern Daylight Time, 9:45 local AM Tehran time, as dawn crept up across the Central Command AOR, the skies surged to life. More than 100 aircraft launched from land, sea, fighters, tankers, airborne early warning, electronic attack, bombers from the States, and unmanned platforms, forming a single synchronized wave. This was a daylight strike based on a trigger event conducted by the Israeli Defense Forces, enabled by the U.S. intelligence community. The first shooters
basically the meeting that happened is what triggered this.
At sea were Tomahawks unleashed by the United States Navy, closed in on Iranian naval forces, and began to conduct strikes across the southern flank in Iran. On the ground, forces fired precision standoff weapons, measured, deliberate, precise, and lethal. This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, striking more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. We are now roughly 57 hours into the operation. In the initial phase, CENTCOM's focus was systematic targeting of Iranians' command and control infrastructure, naval forces, ballistic missile sites, and intelligence infrastructure designed to daze and confuse them. Coordinated space and cyber operations effectively disrupted communications and sensor networks across the area of responsibility, leaving the adversary without the ability to see, coordinate, or respond effectively. The combined impact of these strikes, swift, precise, and overwhelming, has resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran. Over the course of the last 2 days, the Joint Force has launched.
Now, I'm going to research this a little bit. I don't know if we have air superiority the way he's trying to say. And I say this because and I've noticed that American media doesn't report this, but from many credible sources, after the 12-day war, the Iranians procured some very significant and capable Chinese radar systems. And the radar systems that they got basically counter American stealth. They counter the F-22, the F-35, the B-2 bomber, etc. So I'm going to double check this air superiority thing because they have not been able to be as aggressive as they were in the first war. And they don't want to obviously admit or why. But I'm going to do some more research on that. But I do want your audience to know, for everyone here, that the Iranians do have in hand some very sophisticated Chinese technology. Excuse me.
Is
And
it
so much
Chinese?
air-
Is it Chinese support them like how we support people who or they're just looking towards those vendors?
No, the Chinese supported them and brought it in and helped them buy it because the biggest weakness that the Iranians had after the 12-day war was air defense, and the Israelis were able to establish air defense early on with the Mossad operatives destroying their air defense and blinding them. So one of the first things they did after the war was they went to China and procured a bunch of these radars. I can actually give you the I'll show you right now. I'll keep playing this and I'll pull it up for you here in a second.
Hundreds of missions from land and sea and delivered tens of thousands of pieces of ordnance. The effort continues to scale. This included American B-2 bombers, which again, similar to Midnight Hammer, flew a 37-hour round-trip sortie from the continental United States, dropping precision, penetrating munitions on Iranian underground facilities across the southern flank and slightly deeper. Additionally, Israel has separately executed hundreds of sorties against hundreds of targets. Beyond Air Force and Navy aircraft strike packages, coordinated salvos of precision standoff weapons from across the region have neutralized hundreds of pre-planned targets. As I mentioned earlier, in support of these kinetic operations, U.S. Cybercom and Spacecom have continuously layered effects to disrupt, disorient, and confuse the enemy.
The radar.
I will
that
note that
breaks
this
stealth.
operation
The
had several combat firsts, which I'll allow at some point in the future Admiral Cooper to talk about since he owns the AOR.
All right, real quick, let me show you what I'm talking about. So China sold these radars to Iran that they have.
The F-35 was supposed to be invisible.
And F-35 is like our main workhorse fighter jet. This is like the cornerstone of the air, of our air superiority. This jet.
America spent $428 billion making it that way. Every angle, every coating, every design decision was built around one goal: to never be seen. But the
It's all about stealth.
YLC-8B does not care about any of that. This Chinese-built radar operates on UHF band low-frequency signals, a completely different physics domain than anything the F-35 was designed to defeat. It does not look for the aircraft's radar reflection. It resonates with the aircraft's physical structure, the wings, the fuselage, the tail, making stealth coatings completely irrelevant. Defense analysts confirm the system achieves reliable detection of stealth platforms at 350 kilometers. That is far.
And it's also important to note that the Chinese and the Russians, all of their military infrastructure is designed to combat U.S. Military superiority. So everything that the Chinese design and the Russians design is to combat American stealth it's superiority.
Farther than most F-35 pilots will ever see a threat coming. Donald Trump himself stated in a closed security briefing leaked to defense outlets that American air superiority in the Gulf region is being seriously challenged by adversary technology transfers. And here is what nobody is telling you, yet the radar is only the first half of what Iran just received. The $7.7 billion weapon deal. Most people assume China gave Iran this technology out of political solidarity. The reality is far colder.
And also the other thing too is like for China, right? They import something about 50% of their oil comes from Iran, especially after the Venezuelan situation got taken down. The Strait of Hormuz accounts for almost 80% of China's oil, right? That comes through that strait. Very important for them strategically. So they have a vested interest in the conflict not continuing on. Also, if Iran falls, they know that it's going to become basically a Western puppet state. They don't want them getting closer in the hemisphere. Also, Iran is a BRICS-based nation that's been also dealing with heavy sanctions. China and Russia and Iran obviously are trying to de-dollarize the world. So there's many economic, military, and political reasons as to why the Chinese support the Iranians. But they did definitely step up with helping them with this stuff. And, it's interesting like how, in America and Western media, they're not reporting this. And they're also not talking about any of this when they're talking about combat situations, which obviously they don't want the American public to know this because this is like this is going to bring like approval ratings for the war down even more so. But this is like what we're dealing with. And as much as they're bombing the hell out of Tehran, they should have done way worse as I'm looking at the damage. So I do think that these radars have played a role into it. Also, I've seen from other reporting that a lot of the fighter jets are flying a lot lower than usual, which when jets fly lower, they're not able to create the same level of damage and they have the same level of lethality against their enemies. But the reason why they have to fly low like that
do you think they're flying lower because they're being detected?
To avoid the radars. It's to avoid it's to avoid advanced radars like this. Exactly. Yeah. So that limits their ability to really do a lot of damage. So he's saying that they have air superiority now, but I don't know if that's like what it really is. I'm going to do more research on this, but I do think it's important that people know that the Iranians do have this technology. This technology does counter American stealth. And keep in mind, the Iranians are still fucking up the Gulf states and Israel right now as we speak. Okay, Israel has like a media ban on all missiles coming in. Some stuff is still leaking. So I don't know if this air superiority is going as far as this guy is trying to say. Because keep in mind that a lot of these press conferences is to also make people feel safe, not make them think like, oh, our soldiers are in danger, etc. So I'll keep playing this though a little bit because this isn't just the only thing that the Iranians have. They have this radar, and then they also have something else, which I'll show you in a second.
And far more calculated than that. China currently imports 1.4 million barrels of Iranian crude oil every single day, purchased at a discount of $10 to $15 below global market price.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention. They get it at a crazy discount.
Run that math. That is $21 million in savings every single day. Over a full year, Beijing is pocketing $7.7 billion in discounted energy.
So bam, that's their financial interest in preserving Iran's security.
And in exchange, Iran receives the radar and missile systems that can put American pilots at lethal risk. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi publicly stated that the Islamic Republic has every right to acquire defensive systems from strategic partners. A statement that landed in Washington.
And they have a 20 or 25 year deal with the Chinese for strategic alliance.
Like a direct warning. This was not friendship.
This was the most profitable weapons for oil transaction in modern military history.
Engineered in cold financial logic. But the radar and the oil deal are only part of the equation because China did not stop at detection. The kill chain nobody survived. Detection alone does not shoot down an aircraft. What makes the YLC-8B truly lethal is what China delivered alongside it. The HQ-9B long-range surface-to-air missile system now sits operationally paired with the radar inside Iran, creating what defense strategists call a complete kill chain, from detection to destruction with no gap for evasion. The HQ-9B carries an engagement range of 260 kilometers and an altitude ceiling exceeding 50,000 feet, meaning it can reach high-altitude bombers that once considered themselves completely safe. A single HQ-9B battery can simultaneously track and engage over 50 targets at one time. The YLC-8B finds the F-35 at 350 kilometers. The HQ-9B kills it at 260 kilometers. The aircraft never reaches its weapons release point. A senior U.S. Air Force general speaking on...
Now, when it comes to, Air Force, when it comes to, air combat, it's all about who sees who first. So that's why, stealth is so important because it gives you the ability to see the target first, attack, and then get the hell out of there. That's what radars and surface air missiles are designed to combat.
Addition of anonymity to Reuters confirmed that layered Chinese supplied systems now present a credible threat to fourth and fifth generation platforms operating in the region. The entire 78 aircraft air wing aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln became more vulnerable the moment this system went live.
Now, this is important because this is going to whether they shoot these aircraft down or not isn't the issue. The real concern, right, from a strategic perspective, is now you have a higher risk, right? So now when war planners are, making their military strategies of how they're going to go ahead and engage with Iran, now, what they used to be able to do is just fly in and not have to worry about anything. Now it's like, okay, now we have to engage from further distance. Now we have to fly lower. And this obviously impacts their ability to be lethal and their ability to conduct the warfare the way that they want. So when it comes to like military strategy and how they do things, it's all about war planning and percentages. So if your opponent has a capability that can impede your ability or destroy your ability to wreak damage, you have to adjust for that. And it's kind of like, I call it like, war algebra. What you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. And that's what ends up happening where it's like, okay, they have these radars, they have this capability. Now we have to kind of tone down our aggressiveness because we might not necessarily have the same success percentage that we would have had before. So obviously they're not going to talk about any of this in this press conference for obvious reasons. But this is absolutely something that's in play. And keep in mind, they've had these assets in the region for months. So that also tells me, because they wanted to attack originally in January, but they had to think twice. Like, okay, well, if we attack now, the protesters might not be able to do what they need to do. Like, they have these new radars, they have these surface air missiles. The Chinese also sold them a very dangerous cruise missile. I think it's a CM-302, something like that. Is it in this video? They just closed this deal not too long ago. I'll show you right now. And these things, they call it the aircraft carrier sinker. I'll show you real quick. Chinese, so CM, I think it's the 302. Let's see if I'm right. Okay, boom. Yeah, this is the missile right here, and this came out a couple days ago. Chinese made CM-302 missiles is near completion, and this is a deal that they just signed. And this thing is like it's literally counters U.S. naval technology. You were gonna say something? Go ahead.
No. So, I'm just kind of looking at this from like a top level down, and I'm like, man, it feels like Iran is gonna get like crushed because I feel like we're POC committed though, like from a PR standpoint, we've essentially kind of like put our bid in that like, hey, listen, we